Hey, in our series, The Story, we've been just kind of opening up how we're going to approach the story of God. And the first point was, we looked at that the last couple days, is perfect because we want to start in the beginning. Bereshith is the Hebrew word. One word, we give three words for it, in the beginning, but it's just one word in the Hebrew. It means the start or the beginning of something, the genesis of something, right? That's why the book has its name, the first word. If you told me your story and you started at where you are in your 30s, your 40s, I might say, well, what happened before that? You might have to go back to your 20s, and I might say, well, what happened before that? And you'd go back to when you were single, or what happened before that? You might go back to when you were in college, and what happened before that? All the way back to when you were maybe a screaming baby just out of the womb, and the doctor spanked your bottom. It doesn't happen anymore, but it did when I was born. Oh, I remember that morning. Not really. You'd go back to the beginning, right? And that kind of would give us the full understanding of your life and why you are the way you are. God gives us the story all the way back to the beginning, which is beautiful. Bereshith, Elohim. Bereshith, the Hebrew word, we give three words for it, in the beginning. But it just means that's the start, the beginning, the genesis. Yep, the book gets its name from the first word. The genesis of something is the beginning of something. So the book of Genesis is the beginning of the human race, the beginning of the solar system, the beginning of sin, the beginning of marriage, the beginning of murder, the beginning of chaos, the beginning of cities, the beginning of the Hebrew people. It's the beginning of everything. And so it's helpful for us to recognize, okay, we're going to start there. That's going to be helpful. How else will we look at this? We're going to look at this from the perspective, the vantage point. I brought back my picture frame, the frame of reference idea, right? That we all bring to every story we hear. We bring a frame of reference to every relationship. We bring a frame of reference, a way of looking at life. I proposed that one of the main ways we're going to seek to look at Genesis is from the perspective of Jesus, from Jesus's frame of reference, from the way he did. We looked at Luke chapter 22, verses 44, I believe 44 and 48. Beautiful text, which just basically Jesus tells the disciples that were on the road to Emmaus, he unpacked for them where he was in all the scriptures, starting with the books of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms. We're going to look, if Jesus said that he trusted the book of Moses, which is the whole Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Pentateuch, or Torah, Penta meaning 5, first 5 books of the Bible, which was the official law to the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, to Judaism. If Jesus looked at that and said, that's authoritative, that's trustworthy, and he did, in multiple places, Jesus lifts it up as what he believed in, what he trusted in. Quotes from the Torah when tempted by Satan, confronts the religious leaders by reciting from what they knew as the law and saying, you don't know your law, you don't know the scriptures, because they testify of me. If Jesus trusted the Bible, then I will too. I will trust in it. When we look at the New Testament and the New Testament authors, we find out that the Old Testament writings are quoted over 1,000 times. I mean, verbatim, 250 times by New Testament writers. Over 1,000 inferences to Old Testament passages. When the New Testament writers speak of just the first 11 chapters of Genesis, they do so 103 times, 60 times quoting and 103 times intimating some context of Genesis 1 through 11. You see, Jesus and the New Testament authors trusted the book of Genesis. They saw it as literally setting the stage, putting in place the icons, the allegories, the pictures, the metaphors that would then be used throughout the rest of the Bible as we know it. Therefore, I will too. The implications of this are that from the way Jesus and the New Testament writers, authors, the followers of Christ, the way they looked at Genesis is that it was written by Moses. Its authority and origin was from God, and its audience was the children of Israel, newly liberated from bondage in Egypt. That was its first audience. God spoke through Moses to communicate something to the Israelites they were desperate to know. That needs to be our frame of reference when we come to Genesis. The hermeneutical principle that I shared about this is that the Bible was written for me, but it wasn't written to me. It was written for me, but it wasn't written to me. I have to remember that, because if I think it's written to me, then I'm going to misunderstand. I'm going to think it's written for my context, for my cosmology. It wasn't. It was written for a different cosmology, a different way of looking at the universe. So I have to understand what was going on for the folks that were originally hearing it. And so when the Bible starts out, Bereshith Elohim, it's saying that there's a God, and this God isn't the sun god, isn't the river god, isn't the cow god. This God is the creator of all living things, including those that are in the heavens, the stars, the sun, the moon. They are not God. They are the objects of his creation. As we look at Genesis, I want to remind you that Jesus trusted what was there. So can we. I'll see you tomorrow.